Linda Johnson stepped into the bustling airport terminal with Walter, her husband, trailing closely behind. She had a rigid expression, her chin tilted upward as her gaze swept across the crowd. With a displeased sigh, she muttered, just loud enough for nearby ears, "Of course, 100 people, but not a single one who looks like they know how to travel peacefully." Walter, shifting uncomfortably beside her, whispered, "Linda, maybe let's keep the comments down." But Linda was in no mood to be tempered. The terminal was alive with chatter and movement, families hugging, children laughing, and bags rolling across the polished floor. Linda's attention, however, fixated on a small family seated nearby, two young black children giggling as they shared snacks with a young woman she presumed was their mother. "Look at that," she muttered, her voice filled with disapproval. "Noisy children, just as I expected." She continued, "Walter, remind me again why we don't book these flights at more exclusive times." Walter shifted again, giving a forced smile to a passerby as he mumbled, "I don't think that's an option, dear. Not for Orlando." They arrived at the counter, where Tasha Lopez, a flight attendant with a composed, warm demeanor, stood to assist them. Tasha had an air of professionalism that commanded respect, yet Linda's eyes narrowed as she approached. With a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes, Linda commented to Walter, finally attentive staff, "Let's see if that actually means competent." Tasha welcomed them with a polite nod, her gaze flicking briefly to Walter, sensing his discomfort. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. How can I help you today?" Linda didn't waste a second. "Yes, I certainly hope you can. I want to confirm that we're not seated near." Disruptions, her gaze drifted pointedly towards the children laughing nearby. Tasha's calm expression remained unchanged as she replied, "Your seats are assigned and should meet your needs for a comfortable flight, ma'am." Linda pursed her lips, dissatisfied with the vague answer. "I just expect that our flight remains peaceful. Some of us have higher standards, and we paid for them," she added, her voice dripping with entitlement. Walter gently touched her arm, hoping to guide her away. "Linda, maybe we should just get to the gate," he suggested, his voice low and weary. But she brushed him off, her eyes fixed on Elliot Nguyen, an Asian-American gate agent checking boarding passes nearby. Deciding this was her opportunity to escalate, Linda motioned toward him. "Excuse me, young man," she called out to Elliot with a tone that immediately demanded attention. He looked up, maintaining his professional demeanor as he approached her with a courteous smile. "Yes, ma'am. How can I assist you?" he asked, though he had already caught her pointed glances toward the family and sensed what was coming. Linda crossed her arms and spoke with a self-righteous edge. "I just wanted to ensure we're seated well away from certain high-energy travelers." She gave a small, dry laugh, as if sharing an inside joke that wasn't funny. "You understand, don't you?" Elliot met her gaze without a hint of fluster. "We've done our best to make all seating arrangements comfortable for everyone, ma'am, and our flight attendants are more than capable of ensuring a pleasant experience." He paused, his expression neutral but firm. "If you have specific concerns during the flight, please let us know." Linda narrowed her eyes slightly but finally relented, her shoulders stiffening as she turned back toward Walter. "Fine," she snapped, though her frustration simmered just below the surface. "But I expect to be accommodated if anything goes awry." Walter, relieved to move forward, gave Elliot an apologetic look. "Thank you," he murmured under his breath as he steered Linda toward the gate, sensing that the day was only beginning to unravel. Linda Johnson's heels clacked sharply against the airport tiles as she approached the gate, gripping her husband Walter's arm. Her gaze scanned the area, lingering with disapproval as her eyes landed on Naomi Williams, a young black woman who was minding two energetic children nearby. The children, giggling over a game on one of their small screens, sat cross-legged, their laughter spilling into the airport air. Linda's lips thinned. "Walter," she whispered, tugging at her husband's sleeve with an air of offended dignity. "Can you believe the nerve of some people? Bringing children to a place like this and letting them carry on so loudly? I thought we were supposed to have a quiet flight. Do people not know how to travel anymore?" Walter shifted uncomfortably, murmuring, "I think they're just having fun, Linda." But Linda was already striding over to the gate counter, where Elliot Nguyen, the gate agent, was helping another passenger. He was a young man, calm and collected, as he managed the requests of the boarding passengers. Linda stepped forward, interrupting. "Excuse me," she said, her tone layered with a cold edge. "I'd like to file a complaint." Elliot looked up, maintaining a polite smile. "Yes, Mom? How can I assist you?"
Linda threw a glance over her shoulder at Naomi and the children before leaning in, as if to protect her words from the surrounding crowd. "Those children over there," she said, her voice low but cutting, "are making quite the disturbance. It's just, well, it's very unpleasant, and frankly I don't think they belong on this flight. It's a matter of travel etiquette, you know. People who respect others ought to act accordingly in public."
Elliot's eyes flickered, betraying a trace of discomfort, but he responded with professional calm. "Thank you for bringing it to my attention, Ma. I am. We do our best to ensure a pleasant environment for all passengers." He turned toward Naomi and the children, meeting Naomi's gaze with an understanding nod. Naomi's polite smile held firm, though the slight tension in her jaw suggested she had heard every word Linda had muttered. The children looked up, momentarily pausing their game, and one of them gave Naomi a concerned glance. "Miss Williams," Elliot asked, his tone respectful, "are you traveling with these children today?" "Yes, I am," Naomi replied, her voice steady and even. "I'm their babysitter." Linda's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. "Babysitter," she muttered. "Well, you might consider keeping them under control if you expect everyone else here to have a tolerable flight." Her words were laced with an air of assumed superiority, each one delivered with a clipped precision meant to convey her disapproval. Elliot maintained his composure as he addressed Linda. "Ma, Miss Williams is fully authorized to accompany the children. We checked her documentation earlier, and she has every right to be here." Linda opened her mouth to object, but the firmness in Elliot's tone stopped her. Walter, visibly uncomfortable, pulled gently at her arm. "Linda," he whispered, "maybe we should just sit down."
She hesitated, but finally, with a dramatic sigh, allowed herself to be led away, casting one last look of disdain toward Naomi and the children. Naomi caught Elliot's eye, giving him a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she murmured, and he nodded back with quiet solidarity.
Linda Johnson, a meticulously dressed woman with an air of entitlement, scanned her boarding pass and entered the cabin. Walter, her husband, followed quietly behind her, casting tentative glances her way, as if preemptively bracing himself for her usual high expectations. She was certain her prearranged first-class seating would guarantee a pleasant journey, one free from disruptions and disturbances. As Linda reached her row, her composed expression quickly crumbled. Seated beside her was a young black woman, Naomi, with two lively children who were busily chattering, their innocent excitement filling the air. Linda's face tightened, and she quickly gestured for Walter to take the seat directly behind her. "Excuse me," she said, summoning Tasha, the flight attendant. Tasha, a confident and composed woman with a calm smile, approached immediately. Linda leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hushed but pointed tone. "I requested a peaceful seat," Linda said, her tone leaving little room for debate. "I wasn't expecting." All this chaos, she gestured vaguely toward Naomi and the children, her expression layered with unspoken meaning. Isn't there somewhere? Quieter. Tasha caught the implication but responded professionally. I'm afraid we're fully booked, Ma. I am. There are no other seats available. Her voice held a gentle firmness, as if to suggest that perhaps Linda's discomfort might not warrant an immediate relocation. Tasha's composed demeanor only seemed to fuel Linda's frustration further. Linda's jaw tightened, and she quickly turned back to Walter. Can you believe this? She hissed. I booked early for a reason, and now I'm crammed next to her. Voice trailed off, intentionally left open, as though the mere presence of Naomi and the children didn't need further explanation. Walter offered a helpless shrug, leaning forward to whisper, Linda, maybe it's not that big of a deal. They're just kids. Oh, Walter, Linda snapped in a low tone, her expression etched with indignation. This is supposed to be a first-class experience, not some free-for-all. She pulled her shoulders back, glancing disdainfully at the children, who, oblivious to her ire, were playing a quiet game, their laughter genuine and bright. Naomi, aware of the tension but choosing to remain calm, turned slightly toward Linda and offered a warm smile. It's their first flight, she said kindly, as though to bridge the rift. Linda barely acknowledged Naomi's gesture, merely pursing her lips tighter. Wonderful, she replied flatly, turning back to Walter, whose attempts to soothe his wife now seemed futile. Tasha watched from the aisle, standing by as Linda continued to murmur her displeasure to Walter. With a calm but firm expression, Tasha stepped forward once more. Is there anything else I can assist you with? She asked Linda, with a tone that subtly conveyed a boundary. Linda opened her mouth to reply, only to find Tasha's steady gaze awaiting her response. For a moment, words seemed to fail her, and realizing she'd reached an impasse, Linda finally slumped back into her seat, huffing in reluctant silence. Tasha offered a gentle nod toward Naomi and the children before returning to her duties, leaving Linda, at least for the moment, to wrestle with her own discomfort. The hum of engines faded behind the soft laughter and excited whispers of the two children as they played a game of Marco Polo in their seats. Their voices rose and fell like music, innocent and light. Naomi smiled, observing the joy radiating from them. But for Linda, seated just a row ahead, the children's laughter grated on her patience. She fidgeted, pursing her lips and casting frequent, disapproving glances over her shoulder. Excuse me, Linda called, flagging down Tasha, the black flight attendant. Her tone was clipped, carrying an air of entitlement. These children are out of control. They're disturbing all the passengers. Can't you do something about it? Tasha maintained a professional smile. I am. I'll let the family know to keep things down, but I haven't received any other complaints. Linda scoffed, as if Tasha had missed the point entirely. She scanned the cabin, hoping to find allies. Spotting Jamal King, a young black man with headphones on, she leaned toward him, her expression exaggerated with concern. Aren't these kids bothering you? She asked pointedly, attempting to gain his support.
Jamal removed one earphone, his brow lifting. No, Ma am, he replied curtly, glancing back at his phone. They're just playing.
Unfazed, Linda turned to Sarah Chen, a young Asian woman across the aisle. You must agree that their behavior is inappropriate, right? Children should be taught to be respectful in public. Sarah, sensing Linda's intentions, gave a gentle but firm smile. Actually, they're just having fun, she replied. They're not bothering anyone, as far as I can see. Linda's face hardened, frustration replacing her earlier look of superiority. She beckoned Tasha over again, her voice louder, drawing attention. It's clear to me you're not taking my concerns seriously. I demand that these children be removed or at least controlled.
Tasha's gaze didn't waver. "Ma'am, the children aren't causing any issues, and they have every right to be here." Her calm, respectful tone subtly reaffirmed Naomi's right to stay seated with the children.
Linda, visibly agitated, leaned close to Walter, whispering angrily. Then, raising her voice again, she called out, "This is unacceptable. Is there anyone on this plane who cares about the comfort of paying customers?" Her voice carried over the rows, causing other passengers to glance her way, some with expressions of disbelief and others with clear irritation. Tasha, now joined by another flight attendant, approached Linda with quiet resolve. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down," she stated, her tone even. "Your complaints have been noted, but your behavior is now becoming disruptive to the other passengers." Linda's eyes flashed, and she stood up abruptly. "Disruptive? This is discrimination. I am simply voicing my concerns, and I am being treated like some sort of nuisance." Tasha met Linda's indignant glare without wavering. "I understand you're upset, but the children have not broken any rules, and your complaints have gone above and beyond," she said calmly. "Our priority is the comfort and safety of all passengers. I'm afraid we're going to have to ask you and your husband to deplane." Linda's face paled, then flushed red with anger. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she shouted, her voice echoing as she was ushered down the aisle, her protests growing faint as Tasha and the flight crew escorted her and Walter to the exit. As the door closed behind them, a quiet sense of relief seemed to settle over the cabin. Passengers exchanged knowing glances, and some even gave Tasha an appreciative nod. Tasha returned to her duties with dignity, setting an example of patience and professionalism, as the flight resumed its journey, leaving Linda's bitterness grounded far behind. As the plane takes off, Naomi finally relaxes, the children beside her giggling quietly as they settle into their seats. The two young girls, still glowing from their game of Marco Polo, lean toward Naomi, chatting in whispers, their excitement turning to fascination as they look out the window, watching the clouds and the earth below. Across the aisle, Jamal, the young black man Linda had tried to enlist in her complaints, catches Naomi's eye. He gives her a reassuring nod and offers a thumbs up, mouthing, "You're good." Naomi smiles, a mix of relief and gratitude lighting up her face. The subtle show of solidarity isn't lost on others nearby. Soon, Sarah Chen, the Asian woman who'd also refused Linda's attempt to rally support, leans forward to Naomi with a soft smile and quietly says, "They're lucky to have you." Naomi nods appreciatively, feeling the kindness radiating from her fellow passengers. The children, sensing the calm and warmth around them, relax and begin to play quietly with their toys. Their laughter, soft but joyful, is a reminder of innocence untouched by the judgments and biases Linda had tried to cast over them. Meanwhile, Linda and Walter stand at the terminal, silent and visibly frustrated, as they wait to rebook their travel. Other passengers give them curious glances, some even offering looks of disapproval. Linda, still fuming, mutters under her breath about the lack of respect and improper behavior of those who shouldn't even be traveling. Walter, more resigned, simply sighs, his earlier support diminished as he watches the scene around them. Back on the plane, Naomi notices the attentive gaze of a flight attendant who quietly checks in with her as she walks by. "Let us know if you need anything," the flight attendant says with a warm smile, subtly conveying her support. Naomi feels a swell of relief. For the first time in hours, she feels seen and safe. As the flight progresses, Jamal and Sarah strike up a conversation with Naomi. They share stories. Jamal talks about growing up in a small town, and Sarah shares her family's experience as first-generation immigrants. Naomi laughs and tells them about the children's endless curiosity and joy, and her commitment to her work. The conversations flow naturally, building an unexpected camaraderie. Other passengers join in occasionally, with soft smiles or quiet laughter, everyone seemingly united in creating a sense of warmth and acceptance on this flight. The rest of the journey passes peacefully, and as they prepare to land, one of the children, noticing Naomi's thoughtful silence, squeezes her hand. Naomi glances down, and the child's innocent expression, full of trust and love, reinforces her resilience. When the plane lands, the passengers offer polite nods, quiet goodbyes, and supportive glances. Naomi, feeling an unfamiliar mix of strength and belonging, leaves the plane hand in hand with the children, knowing they were surrounded by people who understood and valued them, even if others hadn't. Meanwhile, Linda and Walter's rebooked flight wouldn't leave until hours later, giving them plenty of time to contemplate the events that had unfolded. In the quiet of the terminal, away from the presence of those they had judged, they were left with the lasting impression of how their entitlement had isolated them, perhaps finally understanding the impact of prejudice when they felt the cold consequences. The story lingers with a message: empathy and kindness bridge the invisible divides that prejudice builds, and only those open to it will truly feel its power.